Jim Robb, and I'm the president of the National Training and Simulation Association, otherwise known as NTSA. For those new to NTSA, we're a nonprofit associated with facilitating dialogue between government, industry, and academia on topics related to providing the best possible training solutions to the warfighters and first responders. We host a portfolio of 9 or 10 events each year, the last of which is SAIC, and I refer you to that and go to the website. It's the largest training and simulation conference in the world. And we came together last December in person for the first time in 3 years. So we look forward to that again next November. We started this webinar series because of COVID, but we decided to continue the series because of popular demand, actually. The series is supported by a volunteer committee, and we appreciate all their events. The topic for today's discussion is demystifying the metaverse. I personally discovered the metaverse last year at ITSIC through a series of presentations given by our Next Big Thing committee. So it's, in my mind, it's only a couple of months old. So since then, we've spent a lot of time trying to get a better picture of what it is, what it looks like, what the opportunities are, and how it could potentially be used by the training and simulation community. So we look forward to that. So today we've got a great panel, and I'd like to introduce our moderator for today. It's going to be DeVore, who is a member of SAIC's Digital Innovation Factory and works as the Director of Engagement for Immersive Technologies. So he's a great fan, and I think, one of the pioneers here into the metaverse. So Luke, thanks for participating today. We are honored to have you and your team on the panel with us. So over to you.
Hey, thanks very much, Admiral. Pioneer, I don't know about that, but I think I make for a good moderator of some actual pioneers. Hey, so we had the opportunity to solicit questions from you all before this thing even started, and you still have that opportunity. Be sure to send your questions in through the Q&A. But of all the questions, one popped up many, many times, and there should be no surprise. What the hell is the metaverse? So let's get right down to it. Marc, what are we talking about? And go ahead and introduce yourself when you answer the question. What is the metaverse?
Well, thank you, Luke. And thank you, Admiral, for having me today. I'm Marc Petit, the General Manager of the Unreal Engine at Epic Games, and I get the pleasure to kind of try to define the metaverse for you today. So for me, and I'll let Tony in a minute also give his perspective, but I think for me, the metaverse is simply the extension of the internet to real-time 3D to deliver interactive and eventually immersive experiences. And you have to think of real-time 3D as actually a new form of media. The current generation of the internet is built on the commoditization of digital pictures and digital video. It's like the core media of the current internet is digital video. And they provide this passive, sometimes judgmental experiences. With real-time 3D and the metaverse, you're actually bringing two major upgrades to communication. One is interactivity, which gives users agency over the content, which is fundamental. Our kids want to personalize and interact with everything. And then in the metaverse and with the real-time 3D technology, we can accommodate multiple point of view. We can accommodate multiple people. And therefore, in the metaverse, everything is social first. Everything is collaborative. Everything happens with the people that you want to be with. And that's not something that the current social platforms actually offer. And so that interactivity and that social aspect for me is the defining, is what's going to make the metaverse very, very different from the internet. And if you follow that line of thought, there are two industries that have a head start in real-time 3D graphics. One, of course, is the games industry, and you're seeing companies like Roblox or Minecraft or Fortnite and PUBG aspiring to become the metaverse by turning their games into platforms. And, it's a very, very public trend that we're seeing right now. And the other industry that has a very long head start in real-time 3D graphic is actually your industry, the training and simulation industry. You guys have been doing this for the past 25 years. And also, I think that metaverse conversation is happening at the moment when we've seen a rapid commoditization of hardware and software, thanks to the gaming guys. And now both industries, the simulation industry and the game industry are converging on the same set of tools and technologies, and particularly commercial game engines like Unreal or Unity. So that's why, you've got this moment happening where things are happening and this sense of acceleration. And, we've seen companies like CAE in the civil domain now relying on the Unreal Engine to create their next generation of simulators. And we're seeing more adoption of Unreal. I mean, the days of America's Army are long behind us, and now we've seen a lot of adoption of Unreal Engine, but also of Unity. So I want to pass it on to Tony to talk about, the commercial, the metaverse and the commercial game engines.
Yeah, thanks. What do you think, Tony? And also, he said that it is, kind of, what would we say? Is the metaverse an evolution of the internet, or is it a revolution of the internet?
I can share you my trick when I talk about metaverse. You replace metaverse by internet, and you see if it still makes sense.
Marc. Yeah, you stole my act. You stole my act on that part, Marc. But yeah, thank you, thank you. Tony Parisi, head of AR and VR at Unity, and so. I have been working in the metaverse and on metaverse technology for almost 30 years. So I know a lot of your viewership are saying, what? I just heard about this stuff recently. But the fact is that the industry has been working on technology like this and related to this for decades already. I will say, Marc and I disagree on almost nothing. Our companies will be competing for your business all day long. But there's a shared vision that both Epic and Unity have around making real-time 3D accessible for everyone. And so, it's not surprising that we agree on most things about our definitions of the metaverse. It's absolutely the next evolution of the internet, powered by real-time 3D. Real-time 3D is making our computers more useful, more fun, often for entertainment purposes, making our lives better, hopefully, and more safe. And these are the reasons we're using this computer technology. We should not be using them to envision some science fiction dystopia. I'm sure we're going to get to that in the discussion, Luke. This is about making our lives better in all these different ways. I will maybe take issue with one thing Marc said, which is I don't believe every experience in the metaverse is by necessity social. I think there are plenty of single user use cases that we can explore and talk about. And those, in my personal definition of the metaverse, fit. So it's about 3D visualization. Now, the medium itself is inherently collaborative. And these things should be able to be shared, but we don't necessarily have to have a first-person avatar and have more than one of us in an experience to say that is part of the metaverse. So just I would say that slight disagreement with you on the way you framed it there, Marc. But otherwise, yeah, this is the next generation of the internet. Anywhere you talk about metaverse, replace it with internet, like Marc said, and that is a really good guidepost for going forward.
Fantastic. And Tony, let me follow up. Why? Right? Is it
why,
just why the revolution? Is it just to have that deeper, richer engagement with the digital world around you? Is it going to change how we think or how we behave? Why are we moving that direction?
Well, look, as Marc said, there's been a couple of industries that have really pushed the state of the art here, right? And that's the game industry and everything to do with military simulation. And those were the first use cases that could justify the business, the significant investment in the advances in hardware and software. But now there is a dividend that the rest of humanity can actually reap here, which is that because of these advances, hardware technology has gotten significantly faster at much lower price points. So with classic Moore's Law stuff. Content creators know how to create this content in ways they haven't before. So now we're seeing explorations in new types of user interface, new types of ways of interacting. And finally, I think all of us, including even us, say middle-aged folks on this call, have now seen several generations of people grow up as digital natives with CG movies, playing video games now for multiple generations. And so it's kind of obvious this is a next advance. You could ask why, but I would flip it around, Luke, and ask why not? We have this technology available now. Why not explore all these different ways to make the computer experience that much better and more productive and more fun?
Absolutely. And I was wondering if you're going to say the words "because we can," right? And it's kind of where we're at right now. So Bob, we're describing the metaverse and what that is, what it means. And it's a little bit like when we used to talk about gaming, and then as gaming became professional or as gaming became serious, then we started talking about serious gaming. So do you think, are for the NTSA community, are we talking about the metaverse or are we talking about a serious metaverse?
No, hey, thank you. So first, a quick introduction. I'm Bob Kleinhample. I'm the Vice President for Immersive Technologies for SAIC. So think all things extended realities, live virtual constructive simulations, and really just from the perspective of how we immerse the human in these environments. And so, yeah, to answer your question, Luke, it's for me and from my perspective, I'm talking about this serious metaverse, and I think the parallel with serious gaming, if people look at it through that lens, and what that means for gaming is what it means for the serious metaverse. So apply serious gaming, that's really game technology is applied for the benefit of the human, making people better through its use, and not necessarily for entertainment purposes. So from the metaverse, that's now again applying and leveraging the metaverse to improve people. And so I think that's how the government really benefits from this, and from the, so, some people even call it the government metaverse or the serious metaverse. The government is about serving the people and making people better, be it, the warfighters, be it employee base, as well as maybe the constituency, the people that we're serving, and the general population. How do we make it better? And so that's how I'd like to think about the serious metaverse. But there's some key values that both Marc and Tony has already hit on, that are key to this, that will still apply, whether it's entertainment or whether it's for the serious metaverse. There's the real-time 3D. There's the virtual presence anytime from anywhere, the collaborative aspects. And I think the government can really draw upon those key values to deliver and improve people. And, so again, kind of wrapping this up, the serious metaverse is the 3D internet, providing real-time 3D, virtual presence anytime from anywhere, and a collaboration capability for the improvement of people. I do have one big ask of the community as we start to define this, and it's kind of about what I don't think it is. And I know Tony and others have said that, hey, we've been doing this for a while, and I guess I'm putting from my lens in the training simulation community. We've been doing this for a while in the live virtual constructive community, but I don't want to make this about live virtual constructive. There's things unique about that have come together now and recently, which is really enabling the metaverse, going back to, again, the real-time 3D, the virtual presence anytime, anywhere, and the collaboration. So I think come back to that, and that helps us put that definition of bounds around this, because if we try to make it all about, hey, this is all LVC, we won't be able to put the energy and the resources behind realizing the value and the potential of the metaverse. So let's kind of keep some definition, keep some discipline behind that. And then I think a final point too, and so, I mentioned to you, a lot of my interest is about extended realities. I see extended realities as not the metaverse in and of itself. I kind of see that really as it's the user interface to the metaverse. And so just kind of planting that seed for everybody. So back to you, Luke.
Awesome. Hey, thanks so much. So Tyler, we're talking, so the serious metaverse, right? The metaverse where you get stuff done, where you learn things, where you become expert at something. What do we take? Like, you've been all about interactive media, interactivity. What do we take away? What can we borrow from the evolution of serious games into the serious metaverse, whether it's instructional design or whatever else? How do we make this thing useful?
Absolutely. Well, first, thank you, Luke, and to NTSA at large. My name is Tyler Gates. I own a company called Brightline Interactive. We're a 20-year-old immersive technology company that's probably spent the last decade building large parts of infrastructure and experience in what we now understand as metaverse. And I think that is, that's particularly the point. We now understand it as metaverse. That collective we, Tony and Marc and Luke and Bob and many others, we've been involved in this industry. And as Bob is saying, it isn't just an extension of something that you already know. It is much, much more than that. And it's really an expansion of the overall container size in terms of our understanding of what is actually possible. What can we do with technology? So it is critically important that we don't just see it as like the next step to LVC, because it is really exponentially larger than anything that you can imagine, having to do with LVC. Really, what we're seeing happening, though, over the last decade is this amalgamation, this convergence of technological capability that many people have been involved in at various stages. You may be involved in setting up, the information technology infrastructure at your, at your base or post or whatever the case is. You may be involved in cloud computing and edge compute, and you may be, figuring out ways to leverage cloud so that you can sort of decentralize information for all kinds of efficiency. Or you may be heavily involved in virtual reality, the creation of content, or the ability to sort of gather assets, 3D assets, so that you can distribute them across many platforms. All of these aspects of creation are elements of infrastructure that support what I would say is sort of like big M metaverse, the overall capability at large. And really what is so valuable about the word metaverse is it is actually a container itself that can help lots of people understand where to put all of these capabilities. Where do they go? Where can we find value with them? How do we transact? How do we do this at larger scale? Metaverse gives lots of people that are sort of in varying stages of involvement in the sort of ecosystem an ability to have a common language, a dinner table that we can all sit around and say, yes, we at least understand this much about the 3D, basically real-time 3D over the web. And so it really is, what we've seen is lots of specific efforts over many decades, really, that have sort of converged now in a way where we can actually find value. And to the military government customer, it's about interoperability. I mean, really, metaverse overall is about interoperability. It's decentralized information at various levels. And so what this fundamentally allows for is it sort of is like the military at large, government simulation at large, has been asking this question for over a decade. How do we remove the silos? How do we remove the circumstance where we spend billions of dollars developing a technology, but now it's just owned by one entity that's going to control it in perpetuity? And so they have to back themselves out of that cul-de-sac and go back out to the main road and try again. But you just keep building out to these cul-de-sacs when you don't build a system that's interoperable. And so to me, this is what is most fundamentally valuable to the military customer right now about the concept of metaverse, is the ability to take the actions that we're currently doing in training simulation and things that we're not doing and be able to give them a place to operate that is interoperable.
Awesome. Hey, thank you. So, I mean, you kind of touched on it, but it's a good question. And Chris on the Q&A touches on it too. He's essentially asking why now? Like, what are those milestones that occurred that we're having this conversation now? Bob, from the DoD perspective, the things that are going on in the sort of broader ITSIC, Team Orlando type community or beyond, why is this a timely discussion to be talking about the metaverse now? And if so, why?
Well, I think several things. The need, first of all, from extended reality's perspective, it's still somewhat nascent in the DoD, but they're embracing the technologies that allow us to immerse the human more into these 3D virtual worlds and to take advantage and to leverage that. And so there's more cultural acceptance to do that. So I think the cultural acceptance of the DoD as well as government to this is a key aspect as to why now. I think technology is converging, again, ubiquity of devices to be there. So from the mobile device, which all the compute power as well as the ability to reach out and pull the virtual worlds to one's access is there. The user interfaces that allow you to access it are all converging at this particular point in time, as well as infrastructure components, the cloud is coming together as well. But then also on the DoD, there's strong signals to have the ability to do this from digital engineering, and then the training environments such as the comm simulation training environment and others. There's those signals to enable warfighters, enable people to collaborate, to perform, to achieve high levels of performance. So I think that's why now, and technologies is coming together right now to enable it.
Awesome. Hey, thank you. So Tyler, based on the types of interactivity that we imagine people will achieve in the metaverse, in the military community in particular, is this a training environment? Is this an operational environment? Is this a digital world that we collect data that's going to train algorithms later on? What's the value proposition? What are we going to do with it?
All of the above, everything that you just said, and everything that you can't even imagine to think about. I mean, it really truly is a container size that is so large that we don't know where the edges of it are. And so what that allows for is for us to think about, it's really, again, if you can sort of peel back the idea that we're talking about deeply technological things, and you can think about the sort of mechanic of it. What is it doing overall? What does a concept like metaverse do for us as human beings? Well, it allows us to close the gap of time and space, because it allows us to communicate, to convey context from point A to point B in a much more compelling and immersive way. It's obvious that if you are present inside a physical environment, that it's going to be easier for you to take in information about that physical environment, not just with your eyes and your ears, but with your body, with proprioception, with your understanding of space. And so this just lends itself so nicely to the idea of training and simulating, especially if you're moving your body through space in the real world. And we want to train for that. In a virtual capacity, we can train for that in ways where we can recreate anything. And by recreate anything, this is sure, we've seen for 10 years the difference between 360 video and graphic rendered content and all those sorts of things. But those days of sort of combining or comparing those two things are over. The ability to recreate the real objects on top of the real world is here. And there is a seamless interaction there. I mean, that is going to continue to grow. And with the work of both, Tony and Marc's companies, I mean, this type of stuff, we have said for, years that they're game engines, but they're really actually creation engines now. They're abilities, ways for us to leverage game content that we have been using in computer-based simulations, but we can now think about that content being used at the human scale wherever you are. And so, I mean, Tony and Marc both said this, it's real-time 3D. And so where can you get real-time 3D? Anywhere where the network exists. And so network plays a huge role in this, but if you have the network, then you can actually have real-time 3D on base for the sake of simulation, for the sake of real-time data reporting off of a digital twin, for the sake of modeling how robotics should learn to move in the future, for the sake of showing sort of point clouds of various forms of data that have no original context, but you actually want to give them a context so that the less qualified person can interpret that information. All of that is what is so valuable about having concepts like metaverse exist inside simulation and training. It really is, simulation and training is a perfect use case for this new mechanism of interaction.
Yeah, can I jump in, Luke?
Please do.
We're not in the context of this webinar, we're not even going to have time to articulate all the use cases. And I think that's part of what Tyler's getting at. You can have something as simple and prosaic as, equipment manuals for the field, or as, deep as what Tyler was talking about with more human scale simulation. And so our challenge here is to try to make, in this context in our webinar, to make this understandable through a set of illustrative use cases, but we can't be reductive about it. I mean, there are going to be so many possible ways to use this technology. They already are, and many of them are already proven. They're just not proven at sort of metaverse scale, as Tyler was getting at. We've been doing this for a while. Yeah. So that's all. I mean, it just strikes me we're not going to ever get through all the use cases on this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And even is the most improbable of places. I mean, we're seeing, AR being brought to fighter pilots in their jets, traveling at Mach 2 through the Red 6 platform, for example. It's quite amazing to see that, being able to train against virtual enemies, but you can actually train in your own jet,
absolutely.
in fighting conditions. So that's all the way to the battlefield.
So Marc, back to Chris's question, so what else, can you name a few specific milestones, either culturally in the business world or in technology that, maybe even if the last like 10 to 15 years, you don't have to go all the way back to the 90s, but a few milestones that have really propelled us towards a viable metaverse?
Well, I mean, it's been it's hard to pick up milestone, but it's, you know, I think it's a continuum. For me, it's all about the hardware and the fact, you know, the accessibility of the compute, and so the arrival of the GPUs, you know, the transition from silicon graphics to NVIDIA that happens, you know, it was probably a big defining moment, you know, to get where we are today. And you know, all the work that the gaming industry has done on the hardware form factor for graphics, you know, I think that's paved the way for game engines, and I think they've paved the way for the metaverse today. So I think the roots are in the hardware, and I think the other aspect of it is, you know, with the cloud now and the kind of compute we get on the cloud and kind of graphics capability on the cloud and 5G networks, we have this moment when we have all the enablers are in place, you know, because games are all the minutiae of a certain device, but we can deliver immersive interactive content on the web now in a browser using WebRTC and cloud streaming. I mean, we have critical mass capabilities to actually make this content available. It used to be that publishing 3D content was very, very difficult, but now we have the complete web stack with WebGL, WebXR, WebAR, and WebGPU coming up, and we have cloud streaming. So we really have a critical mass capability to simplify the consumption. And so I think that's what makes it this magical moment, because now we can get the 3D everywhere. It's not just reserved to, you know, to super high powerful PCs or some theoretical XR devices. It's everywhere in our phones, in all of the web.
Can I add to that a little bit, Luke?
Yes,
so
please.
yeah, I would say with Marc, it is hard to pin down any specific milestones because there's been such a long evolution of all the developments he talked about. But I will offer a couple. When I think about this, I think a couple of big milestones in the last decade and a half to 2 decades have been Keyhole. So, you know, Earth visualization. So one of the more serious metaverse-like innovations that has impacted everything as it became Google Earth and really made a massive impact on our lives. Another one would be, you know, less broadly impactful, but definitely breakthrough experientially would be Second Life, which you would have to say is arguably the first attempt in an incarnation of something like a metaverse, though it wasn't open. It's based on much earlier technology, but really made some innovative strides. Maybe add to that, I mean, obviously we've got some really recent ones with Oculus and Fortnite, you know, real breakthrough consumer level experiences that are showing the way. And in each step, they've done something to move the bar, you know, to raise the bar and push the state of the art forward. So you can point at very specific breakthroughs, I would say, along this trajectory. But overall, they're little pops within this continuum of evolution of the kind of tech that Marc's been talking about. Did you want to jump in back on that, Marc or Tyler? Yeah.
And there are recent milestones that are really important. And I would say, like, totally agree on Second Life 2003. I mean, that was early days of understanding what this is, that you can do this on a computer in a virtual space. But even just recently, I mean, you mentioned Epic Games and Fortnite. I mean, that's $3 billion in 2018. That sets up the stage for there is actually an audience here. There is actually a space where people will come and do this type of activity. You know, Facebook changing the name to Meta, that obviously creates a massive spike in everyone's awareness, good or bad. It creates awareness. And so what happens downstream of that is then, again, people sort of then being able to put these ideas into this container of metaverse. And even recently, I mean, just having major players like, I mean, AT&T just announced two weeks ago that they did a test on Naval Base Coronado, 5G test, and it was successful to successfully prove that 5G is workable for smart warehouse solutions on naval bases. They proved 4 gigabyte speed at, the latency was less than 10 milliseconds round trip. And so it just is with speeds like that. That's where you can start to understand the why. Why is this happening now? Well, technologically, it's now possible to host content where you can transact very, very quickly, which means for the training and simulation world, for interoperability, doing joint fire training, having a landing signals officer on deck of an aircraft carrier and an F-18 pilot landing on deck, but they're both inside the same environment, but they're geographically separated. That creates capability. And these newest advancements really just even in the last 2 to 3 years have really set up the industry. You have major players like NVIDIA who have now set up entire public sector revenue streams, fully recognizing that it is not just gaming, that it is very much so a much broader industry at large.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. But here comes the serious metaverse again, Bob. How are we going to, and someone asked the question, it's different in the DoD. It just is. There are constraints. There are considerations. In positive ways, there's funding available without the going concern necessary of monetization in the business. But there's also security and the need for interoperability, et cetera. We have a couple questions coming in asking, it's a pretty nuts and bolts issue about security. Can we actually achieve something like Tyler was describing, where we have the yellow shirts on the deck of the Ford interacting with someone in a flight simulator down in Pensacola? Like, is the security within our reach to make that real? And what about the interoperability of those two simulations, which will probably be developed by different companies?
Yeah, so look, absolutely, it is possible. In fact, you leverage the development, you leverage the capability that the entertainment industry and the commercial industry is developing, and you pull that in. And of course, when you add security, you got to add your enclaves to it, right? And so there's techniques and tools in which they can use to secure that, to enable government to collaborate as appropriate, be it for training, be it for business, be it for those different aspects. So you can absolutely leverage it and use those various components of it on the government side. I don't see it as a limitation. I actually see this as something tremendous that's happening in the ability for government to leverage this goodness and all this convergence and everything that that everybody else is talking about here can all now come together and be integrated for the benefit. So I think there's tremendous value to be realized today with this capability. And again, to wrap it up, I don't see it as a limitation that the government environment. I see it as its opportunity to grab what's there now and actually make use of it. And there's really no reason why we can't. You're on mute, Luke. Sorry.
You think I know by now, right? You think I know. So Tony, how are people in the commercial world, in the private sector, in the regular metaverse, not the serious metaverse? How are people going to monetize that? How are they going to make money? And how is that going to develop the interest in the metaverse and all the relating technologies that's going to drive that market going forward?
There's going to be all the same kind of ways people have been making money on the internet, though I think the mix, if I can make a personal prediction, the mix may change. I think there's a bit of a
so it's gonna be tons of advertisements in my face.
That's what I was about to say. Probably not, and that is probably a lot of folks' fear. Unity has a massive ad network for mobile gaming. It's very kind of it's good. It's very friendly because it's basically interstitial ads when you're playing a free-to-play game. So it's not it's in your face, but the culture of free-to-play game consumers has accepted that as the price to get a free game. Is that going to translate into a fully immersive metaverse? Probably not. I mean, if you've seen the film Minority Report, you probably don't want your advertising just chasing you around as you move through space, whether it's an augmented reality world or a completely immersive virtual world. So you imagine that mix is going to change. The idea that branded content will not exist in this metaverse is naive, though. If people have something to sell, they're going to find an audience and find ways to sell it to them, whether it's, wearing a sandwich board and ringing a bell or putting up billboards. So there will be some kind of analog. There are also, I think, novel ways, and I'd love to hear Marc's thought on this, but especially, given the innovations in gaming like Fortnite, of having completely virtual, based revenue streams of virtual goods, of items that never existed in the real world. I mean, that is a whole other way to monetize. And these are sort of the consumer oriented ones I'm starting to highlight here. They're not even taking into account business to business types of ways to monetize, whether you're selling products or offering training services or other things that people can do in the commercial sector. Marc, did you want to pick up on that a little bit?
Yeah, no, I think you're right that the mix will change. And it's the first time I hear friendly and interstitial in the same sentence, Tony, because I think there is nothing friendly about interstitial ads, personally.
And yeah, this is how YouTube and all these other,
I know.
ads work.
It's time we move on from that. And I mean, you call out Fortnite for not having advertising. I think it is true. But we do brand engagement, I think, because of the very nature of real-time 3D, like we did the launch of a Ferrari car in Fortnite, or Balenciaga, fashion collection, because it brings the players to have a friendly interaction with the brand. So it's a different thinking that, in interstitial advertising, I think it's part of the future. But the other thing about 3D worlds, as Tony was pointing out, and we see it in Roblox and in Fortnite, is people can start creating and monetizing their content. We have this user-created economy, and here we need new business models, because people come to play a game and they buy, from an experience designer or a game developer, and they buy a piece of content, from a creator. Like, if you go to Fortnite, there's no pay to win, no pay to play. The gameplay doesn't change, but you can purchase a skin that came from, Star Wars or Marvel. So we need to find business model when there is a fair share, of the value that is across the content creators, the people who drive the engagement through gameplay, and the people who are the platformers. We have some very public fights about platforms gouging, in the value chain. And I think it's one of the big challenges. It's those new business model and really the enablement of that creator economy, because through the work of Unity and Unreal, a lot more people can actually create content. And, with AI, assisting the artistic process, it's creating high quality content is becoming, something that's, available to more and more people. So yeah. I think it's one of the big things we'll have to define in the consumer space, that new engagement model, that new advertising model, and that new kind of revenue sharing model, that we enable a true creator economy and we move away from the stigma of the mobile platforms. For sure.
Hey, so Marc, let's talk a little bit about the whole walled garden concept. If you could define that real quick. And then for the, I keep saying the regular metaverse, but just to distinguish it from this serious metaverse. But for the regular metaverse, what does that mean? I see the business benefits of a walled garden to specific companies, but what should we be striving for, in your opinion?
Well, I think people understand walled gardens pretty well. Try to put an application on the iPhone or have your own payment system, and you just can't. You have to go by the regulation imposed upon you by the hardware manufacturer, Apple in this case. So same for Facebook. When you go there, you agree to data agreements that are what they are and non-negotiable. So I think you can create open platforms, as we're trying to do, which means that you only collect the right amount of data to deliver certain services. You're not trying to monetize the data. You're not trying to remember people in between two sessions. There's a lot of ways that you can achieve that. Of course, there is the conversation about decentralized model and Web3, which is a completely orthogonal topic in my mind to the metaverse, where you can go to the extreme and use the blockchain and fully anonymize everything, fully decentralize everything, which creates a new set of other problems. But I think, for me, the challenge we have is building platforms that are safe and respect privacy. And allow you to move with your data from platform to platform and do it in a way that can be regulated and can be fair and transparent and does not rely on kind of this anonymized, decentralized technology.
So Bob, in the serious metaverse, is it by definition a walled garden, right? Because we're going to be operating on government military networks. We might be operating on the J10 or the S10, right? Isn't it kind of by definition a walled garden? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I guess it's an enabler. And the second part of the question is, how is industry, large businesses in particular, I'll get to the small businesses next. How is industry going to stay engaged and monetize moving forward in the metaverse if there's a need for an asset developed by one developer to be simultaneously available in a world or environment or an experience created by another developer?
Yeah. So first of all, the walled garden, again, I don't see it as a walled garden. It's, again, we're leveraging for the government. It's again, you're just securing aspects of it, but you can still have in an open fashion capability attitude and contributed to the environment, and you draw and leverage upon that. And then if you need to, you can kind of create your enclaves. You can create ways to secure as required your data and your information. The second part of your question again, Luke, what was that again?
monetization, right? So
Yeah. Thank you.
how's the industry going to stay engaged?
Okay, so monetization. And so I don't think monetization, obviously in defense contracting, we think of monetization differently. So there's going to be, there's products you can sell on this. There's capabilities that, customized capabilities that you deliver. There's even not just necessarily customized, there's capabilities you can deliver to scale. And so that aspect, you go in, you can either provide a service and you're delivering those services to create these environments. And so out of the box, these environments aren't going to have much meaning to deliver, to achieve human performance outcome. You're going to need somebody to go either whether you do it in a no-code, low-code kind of fashion, you provide a capability for the end user to develop their environments and their experiences themselves, or whether they need help from industry to help create those experiences and create those capabilities for them. That's the role I think of as a system integrators to come in, or technical integrators to come in and try to help the end customers achieve those capabilities. And again, we will draw upon all this goodness that's happening from the anytime, anywhere capabilities to achieve those visions that we're seeing in these synthetic environment visionary statements that they want the warfighters or government employees. More often than not, they want that training where they are and when they need it. And so it's that real-time availability of that information, that data that's powerful to the human, being able to achieve that and achieve it at scale. And so that's the role of the technical integrator to come in and help realize those outcomes for the end user. So yes, tremendous value can be delivered, but also there is opportunity to obviously to make the money. We got to be able to do that as a company to do that.
So
I think Luke, it's important to draw a distinction here between walled garden as a destination versus technology platform as vendor lock-in. And I think the latter, the government needs to be very, very mindful of, and that's where it really applies, right? I mean, I don't think anyone's advocating that every government piece of content and experience in the metaverse should be accessible publicly. Obviously, you need your privacy, you need these things behind controls, and they need to be closed off. But the technology you're using to implement these is the technology that powers the metaverse. And that is subtly different from the idea of going to some public metaverse destination versus a private one. And so if you think about it by analogy to the internet versus intranets, television networks, closed circuit or not, telephone networks, I think that's a good way to help model it. It's like you're using a lot of commodity technology and infrastructure in any of those other media, so that therefore again you're not generally locked in to closed solutions, but then you have all the controls you need to control who has access to that. And
I think that's super helpful. Absolutely. So Tyler, so from the small business perspective, does the FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulation, including FAR-based contracts like SBIRs, is it going to support your ability to make money and to have a viable business? Not to sound crass, but you got to make money going forward, right? So, what is the relationship between like SBIR data rights and the digital things you're developing when it wants to be used by a potentially limitless number of end users, a limitless number of times across the Air Force, for example? Like, does the FAR even allow for the type of contracting mechanism that would give you appropriate payment for your IP while also making it accessible?
It's arguable, Luke, that the FAR, I mean, just even with the accelerators that have come out of every branch of the military, working basically to fund cyber programs for the sake of these small businesses, small technology companies, that has been the MO. That has been the method to get these technologies to where they are now. So yes, it works, but I would say that again, just depending on the intention of the sort of rapid expansion change, the FAR is woefully outdated, woefully too small in terms of its ability to account for the type of interoperability that the military actually needs. It's almost like these requirements are actually restrictive to innovation, to the ability to expand. And so it sets up an interesting paradigm where you have technological advancement that is outpacing the military's ability to purchase. And that's been happening for a decade, but it's only going to exponentially increase when in a virtual environment. And this is a really important point, I believe, is to think about when we're talking about creating a virtual space, it's important to remember that in a virtual world, every single pixel has the ability to be controlled, to be known. It's not like in the real world where you have to measure using camera systems and you have to sort of guess and you have to sort of like use infrared and cameras to sort of confirm that an object is an object. No, in a virtual environment, it's already known. It's known in real time. And so every single pixel has the ability to be controlled. That means that the amount of complexity towards how an environment can be developed or can be interoperable is that much more complex. I mean, it's that much more intense. And so it really is, what we're doing currently right now is we're using systems to acquire these types of technologies that actually slow the pace of the technology as soon as it's been acquired.
Hey, look, I want to, though I don't, until I'll press a little bit though. I don't think that FAR is necessarily the hindrance. It's perhaps how the government may be asking for the technologies and the contracts they put in place. And so you do need contracts that, for example, have an IDIQ element to it to allows the engineering and integration to occur as technology is maturing. So if you have very strict and rigid requirements that you define, then you're going to limit yourself. If you make it more outcomes based and open ended, and you allow more agile development and iteration to the capability and the end solution, you're going to be much more successful in having an outcome a capability that's going to achieve the outcomes you're looking for. And so I think, and those tend to be, in my mind, IDIQ type contracts that allow for that, but also you can still allow for, firm fixed price kind of deals too, where you can iterate agilely, with the government with you, and then you're able to then tailor these environments and capabilities to them. And as well as, you treat like these things above my head. They're going to change. 6 months are going to be outdated. So you have strategies in place that, hey, you swap those out and you update, you upgrade without having to throw you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
And your content persists, as technology advances. So I don't necessarily think it's the FAR. I do think perhaps it's maybe the way the technology is being asked for and the vehicles in which they're utilizing.
So Marc,
if the requirements change, if the requirements change and become much broader, that's what drives basically the container size needs to open up. The what is being requested currently it's really representative of everyone understands a new thing through the lens of an old thing. So we're really sort of drawing off of our understanding of how this type of technology has developed in order to sort of future cast out, this is what we think we'll need to do with it. And so I think that just broadly speaking, the concept of having requirements across the board for all contractors, the concept of that is purely limiting. If that concept were to expand drastically so as to open up the floodgates for lots of different types of non-traditional technology companies to be able to participate in these different mechanisms that the government offers, then that would be fantastic. But currently, the FAR is very limiting for small businesses to be able to respond at the speed that the government needs.
Sure. So Marc, I feel like, the metaverse offers this opportunity for us to have reusable virtual objects, or bigger than that, reusable training modules that someone can casually engage with without necessarily purchasing it first, signing up first, like drop all those original barriers to entry. But the small business, someone like Brightline, is going to want to receive compensation for the use of those digital assets or for that casual engagement of training. If it isn't just a straight up sign off on the license or sign off on the ownership of it, aren't there emerging technologies? I'm thinking like Ethereum based blockchain. Aren't there ways that we can use smart contracts to help monetize all of those engagements? And how we integrate that into government contracting, that's a whole nother question, but Like, what else is out there to help make this more controllable without making it stiff?
Well, it was kind of my point earlier. These are the things that remains to be invented. I would say, like traceability of content, because, it's like if Tyler creates a piece of training and somebody takes it and augments it, well, you'd like to have some sort of traceability so that Tyler always makes gets his fair share of his work, even though it's been augmented by somebody else. So, of course, you need some sort of a smart contract. Now, it doesn't mean that you implement it with the current blockchain technology, which come with a lot of designs for anonymity, design kind of to be slow as well.
Yeah, sure.
There are multiple ways that you can implement those smart contracts. But I think this tracking of engagement and this traceability of content is going to be a huge topic for the metaverse. And it's going to be the foundational technology that will empower new business models. And I think especially empower that famous creator economy. We need that. And it does not equate to the things we see today with Ethereum or any of the blockchain technology. I think we need things that government can have a say in. We need things that are safer, I think, for consumers. And we also need things that truly will stand the test of time, because once we want this infrastructure to be there for a long time. So it's probably the place where I think there is a lot of thinking that needs to happen. And I don't think we've seen the kind of core technology that we will need.
Interesting. Tony,
yeah, I was going to double down with Marc on that. I'm super excited about all these so-called Web3 technologies, blockchain, decentralized applications, smart contracts, long list of these things. What we're seeing now is very, very much the Wild West in this area. There are amazing new capabilities I think a lot of folks are flocking to because they are unfettered by what some would consider to be kind of ossified government policies or structures. However, we're seeing so much IP theft, out and out, financial theft, fraud, so many horrible issues. We're seeing these decentralized autonomous organizations springing up, if you've heard of these, which sound like great in principle, true democracy at the touch of a button with a smart contract. And yet what we're finding is that they are becoming quickly autocratic and without some, other controls that feel more like a government, or, an actual legal contract that binds the folks outside the strictures of, a piece of code. They're nowhere near ready for prime time to hit scale. But they're all based on ideas that I think we can get behind, which are the more this could be automated, the more you can reduce the need for middlemen to feed off the food chain, the more you can empower creators with downstream royalties. These are all to the good. But I'd say we're at step 1 of 50 on this. What do you think, Marc? It's going to be quite some number of years and a long road to get this right. Yeah, it's a lot. They might happen fast, but it's a lot.
I was thinking when I grow up, I want to be as eloquent as you, Tony.
Hey,
back at you, my friend.
So my friend Miriam asked a question, and people, it looks like, have the opportunity to vote on the questions that they like the most. And it's a good question. So if you're explaining this to and I'll allow you to choose a persona. If you're explaining this to your 5-year-old child, or on the flip side, to your grandmother, how do you do that? Marc, how do you take that earlier, this is the metaverse, and choose your persona, 5-year-old or grandparent. How do you explain it?
Well, my 5-year-old gets it more than me.
All right, go for the grandparent.
So I try to explain what I do to my mother, and I have to admit it was complex. But I think the way I do about it is I come back to this concept of social first, because I think that caters, social first and agency, that ability to be with the people you like, and that ability to interact or customize, the content is something that people see that digital video doesn't give you that. You'll remember the kids trying to swipe a magazine. So there was this first generation change with the iPad came in, where it was the world of digital video, famous example. Now we're going to get into the world of interactive content. And the thing I want to say, though, it's not limited to computers. When I was talking about commoditization of hardware, we haven't seen entirely the commoditization of display technologies. Our windows, our glasses, our windshield will all become, every glass panel in our life has the potential to become a place to display interactive content, and that will augment and improve our lives. And you guys in the military are familiar with that. You have big bets on this augmentation for fighters and for equipment. But I think it's something that will also happen in our day-to-day life, not just through glasses, but also through, wait, remember in Total Recall when they wake up on a on a beach somewhere. I think it's really that is the metaverse for me, is that the interactive content being there everywhere into the real world and helping us as human beings, live simpler lives.
Marc, I got to tell you, Grandma didn't see Total Recall. She's a little confused. Bob, pick your persona, whether a one-day grandchild or your mother-in-law. How do you describe the metaverse?
All right. So I think I'll describe the metaverse through a story and help them envision themselves of it in a use case. So envision. I think Grandma, you've seen the emergency operations centers, and so
I like that you're embracing the persona. By the way, go for it.
There you go. Is that Grandma? But anyways, you are so in this emergency operations center, you got all kinds of information on the walls. So you got in-tip monitors, and so there's perhaps here's a map, and here's the city block where somebody has to react. Here's CNN or Fox News, whatever it is on the other, whatever you watch. here's that live feed that's also going on, and with real time reporters out there reporting on everything's going bad. You got analytics dashboards popping up with all kinds of data and information that helps you make an informed decision. And so now just say you're the person who's got to make a decision to react to this emergency operation, and now you need to phone a friend. It's like, oh wow, boom, virtually you bring in instantly. You bring in somebody from a different state, the expert in this area comes in and is just equally as immersed in the environment as you are, with full access to the information. And then, oh, by the way, now you want to zoom in. It's inside a building. Boom, you pop up basically a hologram of the building. You're zooming in, and now you're inside this building and making decisions about the actions you got to take. So that is the power of the metaverse that can be realized for the benefit of people today. And so that visualization is what I want people to maybe walk away with. So.
And then Grandma says, Bob, it sounds like you're describing digital twin technology.
Absolutely.
Hey, thank you all very, very much. The last time I looked at the clock, it was like 1:15, and then all of a sudden we're out of time. That went really fast. Thank you all for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Admiral Rob, take us out.
Okay, Luke, really great session. One of many, I hope. I think we need it. I know that the last part of it was very interesting to me, because I think a lot of folks that are in this audience today are still trying to visualize what it is. So we'll take this on with the Next Big Thing Committee and with our group, because I think it's this year in 2022. This will be a major topic, and maybe we can have some demos of the metaverse, or we can really try to attack this problem from the layman all the way down to the serious technician, which I think will be great. So I really thank you for all that you did there, and you did hurt my head a little bit. So I just want you to know. Anyway, thanks again. Now, looking forward, our March webinar will be on the 30th of March, and it's at 11 Eastern, and it will focus on cybersecurity. And if you think about the discussion today, think about cybersecurity as it relates to the metaverse, as well as what it might look like in the dark metaverse. So there's a lot of opportunity, but also some challenges out there. To give you a small briefing here on ITSEC, this year we're looking great. We had a wonderful event in November, and things are looking extremely good for this year in November. So please get engaged, come see us, join the committees, and become a volunteer. With that, I want to thank the panel again, thank the crowd for being here. Appreciate you attending. Remember that you can access this webinar on the web, and we know that people do that. So appreciate you being here, and have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.